Will here. Here's another episode of Cooking with Crutches on request. You know, the days are starting to get a little shorter, the shadows get long, the temperature is dropping, fall is in the air, and as Ned Stark once gallantly said, winter is coming. So that means it's time for some feel-good food, some comfort food, some things that'll warm you up and also fill up your tummy. So we're going to look at shepherd's pie, also understanding what the difference in shepherd's pie and cottage pie is, and we're going to turn this beautiful thing into a wonderful butternut squash bisque. So come back in just a second here, and I'm going to show you all the equipment and cookware that's needed in order to be able to put this meal together. See you in just a second. Hey guys, welcome back. I'd like to take this opportunity to kind of walk through all of the cookware and hardware that's needed in order to be able to prepare these two dishes here. It's not a lot, but it's important that we have the correct tools. I think sometimes it's a challenge in itself to be able to make some of the things that you would want to make and not have the right tools out there. So I like to show you what I use in my kitchen. As with anything else, cooking with crutches is one of those things where we can, certainly modify the way that we would do something in order to be able to come out with some results that would be similar or sometimes even better than we would in, other cases. So with, that being said here, let's do some fancy camera work here. I'd like to start off with the crock pot. Of course, this is a pretty common item that we have in most people's kitchen. I think that the idea, of course, is the size. This is a 6-quart a 6-quart crock pot, and one of the things I like about this one is it does have like the locking lid on the top of it. One of the great things about that is if you do happen to take this dish or any other dish that you would prepare in the crock pot, you're able to grab and go. It's got a nice little handle on the top, the lid locks on, and you're able to take this to your party or your event without a lot of fuss and without a lot of mess. So the second thing is going to be how we're going to puree the pumpkin or the squash bisque. And a lot of people may have these NutriBullets or Magic Bullets. You could also use a traditional blender. The big thing about traditional blenders are because of the steam that's generated when you puree hot foods, it's always recommended that you vent the top. Now, I don't even have a traditional blender. I use this for margaritas and such. But the top that you would normally have here, if you just take the little knob that's in the top of there, most of them will turn, and you can take it off or set it aside so that steam would be able to escape. That would be the big thing. But the one device that I like in my kitchen for pureeing is this little jewel here. This is called an emulsion blender, and the whole idea is that you can immerse this down into a liquid as deep as here and be able to puree from the bottom and using it to spin around. And we'll see more about how to use this device as we proceed further. Also, for the filling of the shepherd's pie, we're going to have a large amount of meat and vegetables. And so I suggest something like this large wok. You don't necessarily have to have a wok, but a large skillet that has some sides on it is going to be really good in order to be able to hold all of the stuff that's there. Mixing bowls are going to be really good. I have lots of different sizes. This is the biggest mixing bowl that I've got, so I want to be able to use that in order to be able to mix all those ingredients together. And then lastly, a nice big stock pot. And this is an 8-quart stock pot with a lid, and we're going to be able to do lots with this. Boil the potatoes or the cauliflower for the topping that goes on the shepherd's pie. Also, as we would move over to, the squash bisque, this is going to be the pot that we're going to stew the butternut squash in, and eventually use the emulsion blender in order to be able to get get the consistency in that bisque that we're looking for there. So just a really quick review of the items that you would need. Of course, measuring spoons, measuring cups. I like to use some small containers in order to be able to pre-measure all of my ingredients, and we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. So come right back and we'll start with the shepherd's pie filling and the topping. So hey folks, welcome back. We're going to start with the filling of the shepherd's pie. I always like to point out, the shepherd's pie is actually not what this is actually that we're making. This is more of a cottage pie. And to give you a little background on shepherd's pie, I guess you could probably go back to the 14th century with the Norman invasion of Ireland that began about 800 years of tumultuous relationship between England and Ireland. And some people say, of course, still goes on today. But the whole idea was that that particular invasion began a time where there was a huge division between landowners and then those peasants and shepherds that tilled the land and shepherd the flocks and various things like that. So when it comes down to this recipe, there's primarily two versions. The first one, of course, the shepherd's pie, which the original recipe, I think, was mutton, which is a outbred sheep that would be then slaughtered for its meat. The beef, of course, was a much higher end cut that most of the people of Ireland were not able to afford. Also, the potatoes were actually introduced by Sir Walter Raleigh, I think in the 1600s, and became like a staple crop and very inexpensive. And so through the combination of harvest with the various vegetables that were available, the potatoes, the mutton, they were able to put together a complete meal in a single pot that would have, all of the family fed and have a nutritious meal. So as we've adapted on the recipe of shepherd's pie, more and more people include ground beef with the recipe and not mutton or even lamb. The idea, of course, lamb is now much more expensive than the ground beef, and most people prefer the taste of beef over lamb. At least in the U.S. they do. So today I'm using a very lean ground beef. I got this from Publix, and it came with 3 pounds. Actually, it's a little bit over 3 pounds. But this is 93% lean, and so I'll see very, very little oil in the pan whenever I fry this up. So right now what I'm doing is I'm breaking down the onion, and this will be the first two primary ingredients into the filling of the shepherd's pie. So if you give me just 20 seconds here to chop this onion up, we'll actually be going to our next step. So you just want to give a little rough cut to the onion and get that down to, a fingernail sized piece of onion. All of this, of course, can go into a little smaller bowl to be able to transfer when we start cooking our meat. We don't want to actually do anything more than sweat these onions. We don't want to cook them all the way through. So once again, just a very rough chop to them, bringing them down to about a thumbnail size piece of onion. This is, of course, going to cook through a lot in the crock pot, so it's not really important that we have anything more than just the sweat on the onion. Sweat would mean to cook until the onions became translucent, so they're not even tender yet. They just barely begin to cut, they barely begin to cook. So we'll brown the ground beef, and as it gets towards the ending stage of that, we'll add the onions and finish that up for the beginning of the shepherd pie filling. Check back with us in just a second. So guys, as you can see, we've added 3 pounds of ground beef to the wok or the large skillet, whichever one that you're using, and you can see that it's starting its cooking process to brown the ground beef. You want to keep this moving around. You don't want to chop it too fine. You want it to have, some consistency of meat about it, but you definitely want to turn it on a pretty regular basis. I like to use this little wooden paddle. It helps break it up, but it doesn't break it up too fine. If you're using, a sharp blade of a rubber spatula or a plastic spatula, oftentimes you won't get the nice kind of a lumpy texture that you'll get when you use the wooden paddle. And so as this becomes a little bit more brown, you want to wait till it gets about halfway through being completely browned, and then from this point we want to be able to add our medium-sized onion that we chopped. I have those onions here, and so we'll take those onions and mix them into our ground beef mixture here. Once again, there's no spices in this yet. There's only the meat and the onions, and so we'll let this continue to cook until the onions become a little translucent. The terminology is called sweating, and I'll come back here in just a second and show you what I'm talking about there. So let's let this cook down, and then we'll come back and let you see that translucent stage. So hey guys, we're back. As you can see, the meat has been cooked completely through. It's got a lot of liquid in there. Some of that liquid actually comes from the onions. That's the term sweating. As you can see, the onions have lost their white color and now take on much more of a pearl color. There's not fully cooked through. They are starting to become tender, and this is when we're going to take this off of the heat. So one thing that I'd like to mention before you drain anything that has rendered fat into your sink, it's always a good idea to turn on the water, allow the hot water to get going, and have it running alongside any of the drippings that would happen to go inside of this. This meat here is actually, like I said, 93% lean, only 7% fat, so the majority of the liquid that you see in our meat mixture is actually from the onions and the moisture that comes from the onions. So we're going to take the meat mixture and just put it over into a colander or a strainer that I've got over the sink. I've got the hot water running, and it'll be able to help any of the fat that's rendered off of the ground beef to get down through the drain. Nothing much more than that. You don't really want to rinse your beef. It loses a lot of flavor that way, but you can certainly, get all of the items off the bottom and sides of your skillet and get those over into your strainer. This needs to set for a little bit and continue to drain, and also to continue to cool, because we'll be incorporating this into the other vegetable mixture that includes the cream of mushroom soup and the instant brown gravy mix. So I'll be back in just a second to show you how to start working on the topping. Hey guys, so while we've got our ground beef mixture here draining and cooling off, I'm going to take our stock pot here. I want to put about 6 quarts of water into the stock pot. And then along with this, I'm going to add some salt I'm going to put it on the stove. I'm going to get a good roaring boil for either our potatoes or our cauliflower, whichever that you've chosen to put on the top of your shepherd's pie. This won't take but just a few minutes to cook. As a matter of fact, it takes about as long to fill up our 6-quart stock pot as it does to mix up the whole topping recipe itself. So I'll be back in just a second to show you how we're going to break down the cauliflower or the potatoes for your recipe. So we're going to break down our green onions. Got a couple of green onions. I've cut the tips off of them. Also, when you're selecting your green onions from the grocery store, you want to make sure that the greens on them are still, really nice and firm, and they don't have any bad spots on them at all. These actually look really, really good. And so the whole idea here is we're going to split the white part down the middle on both of these. And then we're going to just cut these into smaller pieces, right down to the green stalks that you'll see here in just a moment. So just a really nice fine cut all the way through up until about that green spot there. And so these, we want to put those in a nice little container because we're going to mix those in with our vegetable filling. And then the greens that we've got here, we want to make those a little bit rougher cut. So I don't know, about 1/4 of an inch on each one of those. These are actually going to be incorporated into the potato topping that you'll have. And it's like if you were to have sour cream and chive mashed potatoes. And so you've got those greens completed up there. A couple of tiny pieces there. We'll rough cut those. And then these items go into another little dish that we'll incorporate into the potato topping. Next, we have our cauliflower or potato topping. The cauliflower, of course, is really good if you're trying to reduce your carbohydrates, you're on some version of a keto diet, or you have health, issues that are associated with carbohydrates, like diabetes, type 2, type 1. The whole idea is this is a very good substitute for potatoes, and when made correctly, it's very difficult for anyone to really tell a great deal of difference between the potatoes and the cauliflower. And so you want to select nice full big heads of cauliflower here, or the potatoes. If you're using potatoes, of course, you want to peel those potatoes down. Potato peeler is probably the best way for that. For the cauliflower, you don't have to do any peeling. It is a little bit harder to get into. I like to use a little small paring knife from this stage here, and I just go into it from an angle, and I just start working around the core. And what happens there is you either cut your finger off, or you're able to get the core out without a lot of other difficulties there. I am luckily going to get the core out. I did not cut a finger off. And from there, you can just start going in. You can see the tree that makes out all of the various little pieces that come off. You can just start breaking that guy apart. If you get deep enough up inside to it where you need some assistance, you can just take your paring knife and run up in there and make some cuts. But the whole idea is to break down the heads of cauliflower into some pieces that you can fit into the pot. And then if you're making the potatoes, of course, you want to peel the potatoes and then quarter the potatoes before you put them into the water. So guys, we have about 5 quarts of heavily rolling boil of water there. What we're going to do is we're just going to add our potatoes, our cauliflower into this water, depending on which one that you use. As you see, mine is going to be cauliflower. I hope yours is whichever one that you prefer. The potatoes are excellent. I wish I could eat them. But the only difference here is the way that you're going to cook them. Once again, 5 quarts. I put about a tablespoon of salt in there, brought it to a boil, adding in either potatoes or cauliflower. These are going to come back up to a boil pretty quickly here. And then the whole idea is you want to cook these for about 15 minutes if you're using cauliflower, and if you're using potatoes, you want to cook them for a full 30 minutes. So that's, of course, going to be dependent upon, the size of the pieces that you use here. One way to tell when these are done is you can take a fork and insert it into either the potato or the cauliflower, and when you try to lift it up, it'll slide right off of the fork. So that would be the indicator that the cauliflower or the potato is done all the way through. 30 minutes should get it for the potatoes, 15 minutes should get it for the cauliflower. Check back here in just a second. I'm going to show you how to put it all together. So guys, we have our cauliflower or potatoes boiling right now. We got our timer on. They're going to cook 15 minutes for the cauliflower, 30 minutes for the potato. Now we're going to move on to assembling what will be the inside or the stuffing of the shepherd's pie. I like to use these mixing bowls that come with a closable top on there. It saves dishes, and also most people don't have a storage container that this big. So you may want to maybe incorporate this into a couple of different storage containers, but I'm going to use a bowl here that has the ability just to put the lid on it for storage purposes. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble the dry ingredients. We're using the McCormick's brown gravy mix. This is a cornstarch based gravy. Sometimes people, they don't particularly care for the cornstarch based gravy. They prefer something more of a roux base. If you have the ability and skill set to make your own roux based brown gravy, you're certainly able to make this a little bit better. I, for the convenience purposes, like to use this brown gravy mix. It's really not that big of a deal for me. And so you take both of the brown gravy mixes and put that into, the mixing bowl as such. We have a teaspoon of onion powder, not onion salt, onion powder. We add that. We also have a teaspoon of garlic powder, not garlic salt, but garlic powder. And we add that. And then we want to be able to incorporate all those ingredients together. So I use a little dry whisk like this guy here, and we just scramble all those dry ingredients together so that they're all incorporated evenly. From there, we're going to move over to some wet ingredients. We're going to be able to take our can of cream of mushroom soup, and we'll open that convenient lid there. Add the soup as such to that particular mixture, and using our little spatula, use my spatula in order to be able to get all of that extra goodie out of the bottom there. You don't want to waste any of that. Make sure you get all of that whole can out. Then there's 2 tablespoons of Lea Perrin's Worcestershire sauce. And so using a measuring spoon, I'm going to be able to do exactly the 2 tablespoons. There's 1. There's a lot of Worcestershire sauces out there. I believe I mentioned the other. This is a fermented product. It was actually created by 2 food scientists. One named, of course, Lee, and the other one Perrin's. And they have a patent on this particular blend, and it is quite tasty. It's my favorite. There's others out there that try to copy it, but none are really quite that successful. They all pale in comparison. Once you get your wet ingredients and your dry ingredients together, you want to just incorporate that into a little bit of a slurry that you'll have in the bottom. It's really important to incorporate the ingredients like this, because these liquid and dry ingredients combined will now coat all of the other ingredients that we've got. So you get all this together, and it looks a little bit like, light brown gravy. But like I said, it's important to be able to incorporate all of those things. Now we're going to go to our frozen vegetables. The grocery store didn't have separate peas and carrots. They only had the 15-ounce bag of the peas and carrots mixed. And so this recipe calls for 12 ounces. If you wanted to add the whole 15, it's okay. I'm going to try to like break out about 3 ounces here so that I got about 3 ounces left in that bag there, and do the same thing for this one over here. So I got maybe about 3 ounces left there. You want to take those peas and carrots and incorporate that all into that liquid mixture that we were talking about. Has the dry mix, has the gravy mixes, it has the various spices that are in there. From here we're going to be able to take this white scallion. This is where you separated the green onion tops from the white onion bottoms. We want to add that to this mixture. Move that around just a little bit. We also have an 8-ounce package of mushrooms. What did I do with my mushrooms? 8-ounce package of mushrooms. Here they are. So take and incorporate 8-ounce package of mushrooms there. And then certainly by now, I think that your ground beef mixture would be cool. So we want to be able to take that ground beef mixture that we had a little bit earlier. We want to take that ground beef mixture and we want to just add it to this bowl as well. So we're going to have a giant bowl. It's going to be filled with peas, carrots, the gravy mixes, the cream of mushroom soup, all of the frozen vegetables, everything that's in the filling now should be incorporated into this one bowl. And what we'll do with this is once we get it all blended together, we'll take this and add it to the refrigerator. And then tomorrow morning, which you should be looking at this video on Thursday night. So tomorrow morning, being Friday, we'll put this stuffing in the bottom of our crock pot, and then we'll spread the potato mixture across the top of it. And then at 8 o'clock, we'll turn it on low and put the lid on it and leave it alone for 8 hours. And so when our class starts at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, all we'll have to do is turn that crock pot off. So this is a really convenient recipe. If you wanted to do some of this stuff ahead, you could actually do it days in advance. You could even take these two combinations of ingredients and freeze them separately. And then in a flash, you could thaw these two items out, add them to your crock pot, and set it up on a Sunday morning and have a really nice dinner for Sunday evening. It'd be a really nice way to put together a really good meal and not have a lot of effort involved in it. So you can see that I've got most of the ingredients incorporated here into a really even combination of vegetables and all of the liquid slurry that we had combined with the spices and the gravy mix. And so from here, we'll just take this guy and spread him out smooth. And I'm going to take my lid, cap him off, and then we'll add this to the refrigerator for tonight. Remember, taking it out tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. This is the first ingredient that will go into the crock pot. Be back and show you how to put together the mashed potato or mashed cauliflower topping. So guys, the timer has gone off. It's time to pull the cauliflower or potato off of the stovetop. So you want to cut your eye off and then carefully drain the either cauliflower or potatoes into a colander for them to be able to get all that moisture off of them. I will show you, some of the tests that I was talking about. if you insert a fork in and the fork won't allow you to pick it up, you can see that the vegetable slides right off. We know that those cauliflower or the potato, same test for the potato. You stick your fork in, and if the fork slides right back out, then you're actually good as far as the level of doneness is concerned. And so I'll flip these over into another container and start adding our ingredients and show you how to mix up the potato topping. So once again, we're going to use one of the stainless steel bowls with the lids that will, also be able to have these used as a storage container. Once again, we're only storing them overnight, so we put this in first thing in the morning. I've already transferred my cauliflower into the bowl, so we can just start working away with the mashed potato or mashed cauliflower topping. Everyone may remember one of these. This is something that you could use to help incorporate, but I like to use the emulsion blender for this. And because of that, I'm always going to say these last two ingredients, the chopped green onion tops, would go in last, as well as the bacon bits, so that you don't emulsify them into the potatoes. And so starting out while the potatoes are still warm, we can go ahead and add half a stick of butter. We can add the 3 tablespoons of half and half. We can add half a cup of sharp cheddar cheese. Get on out of there. And then if you're using potatoes, you don't have to do this. But if you're using cauliflower, one of the secret ingredients of making mashed cauliflower and have it come out with the same consistency and mouth feel as potatoes, that's cream cheese. And so I've got about 4 ounces of cream cheese here that I'm going to add to the mixture. And then from there, we just go in and start using this emulsion blender. It works pretty good. We just have to move it around. So the heat from the cauliflower are going to melt the cheese, melt the butter, and melt that cream cheese. And it will come up with a consistency that's very similar to mashed potatoes. In fact, one of the things that, I would ask somebody to try is if you've never did the mashed cauliflower, check it out sometime. It's a much more nutritious vegetable than potatoes are. The potatoes are mostly a simple starch. They convert directly to sugar. They're number 1 on the glycemic index. If you're looking to be able to reduce, your carbohydrate load, potatoes are the worst thing in the world for it. Whereas the cauliflower here really have no carbohydrate load at all. It's almost akin to eating cabbage. In fact, cauliflower is in the cabbage family. And so the whole idea is that you just want to use your emulsion blender, hand mixer, or a mashed potato masher to be able to get these guys as smooth as they possibly can be. If you like lumpy, you can keep it lumpy, but I think that you'll find that the smoother these are, the more like the mashed potatoes that they will be. If you have little lumps of cauliflower in there, it's a giveaway that it's not, of course, mashed potatoes. But if you keep these nice and smooth, especially using the cream cheese, you'll see how the creamed or the mashed cauliflower is a super, super alternative for mashed potatoes. And so we'll continue to do this until the potatoes or cauliflower get to the consistency that you want. And then from there, we'll take these, put the lid on them, put them in the refrigerator for tomorrow. One thing that I missed, once the cauliflower is at the consistency that you're good with, you want to add in the green onion tops as well as the bacon, and just mix until they're fully incorporated. This will be the end of the preparation for the top of the shepherd's pie. So hey guys, now we're going to put together the ingredients for the butternut squash bisque. A lot of times people are asking questions like, what's the difference in a cream soup and a bisque? And traditionally, bisque would have been made from some type of shellfish stock, a shrimp, a lobster, crab. You often hear shrimp bisque, lobster bisque, crab bisque. Also, the primary difference is the use of cream in the recipe early on, as opposed to something like a cream of tomato soup. A cream of tomato soup would have cream added at the end, just to smooth it out. But the cream added in the beginning of the recipe gives it a much deeper flavor. And that being said, even though this does not have a shellfish stock that we're building the soup from, it would still be considered a bisque primarily because of the cream being used early on. We're also using coconut cream. I think one of the biggest challenges here with this recipe is going to be breaking down this butternut squash. And to help you do that, I always want to say, you want to be sure to get you a really good knife, something with a good handle. Make sure that it's sharp. I have something like this Sandy-Sage knife, and extremely sharp. So the idea, of course, is just to take the head off of it, take the tail off of it. Then we want to split this guy down the middle. So to do that, sometimes you can just invert the squash like this and start at the top, and using your palm, give it a little bump. And then oftentimes this thing will actually go right down through the middle and be able to give you the pieces that you need. If you don't get it right in the middle, there's not a big deal there. We can actually take this guy and do it again. It actually makes it a little bit easier to handle. Now all the little seeds in here, I'm going to say that we should save these seeds. I'm going to show you how to make a little topping. Looks something like this, pepitas. So we were able to microwave our squash, made it very easy to peel. The potato peeler here is the ideal tool for that. Give you an example. Once they come out of the microwave, you can easily use the potato peeler to take that skin off. So in closing, I think that it is something I'm looking forward to. Please be sure to have all your ingredients. Use your measuring cups, use your measuring spoons, have some of the little bowls here or some of the types of containers that you're going to put your spices in pre-measured. If you're going to use the bread boules, I'll go through exactly what to do in order to be able to make this little hollow area in there. You also have a little roll here that you can, eat your soup or your porridge or your bisque with. The idea of here is having all of the ingredients prepped, onions chopped, the apple, peeled, cored, and chopped. Everything measured out so that when we start up on Friday afternoon, everything can just go into the pot. So I look forward to it, guys. It's been a lot of fun making this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to enjoying some shepherd's pie and the butternut squash bisque. You guys have a great evening. Talk to you soon. Bye.